Black Myth Wukong takes the idea of hidden bosses and turns it into a key part of fully understanding the game's lore. Finding these guys can often reward you with powerful items to make the main bosses easier, and they unlock over 200 journal entries, which sometimes cryptically will explain the deep story being told here. With that in mind, here's 10 more hidden bosses you definitely don't want to miss in Black Myth Wukong, as well as the stories behind them. Our first hidden boss, found in Chapter 2, is one of two Tiger Sons, the other being the Tiger Vanguard main boss, and their father being the hidden Tiger Vanguard from the past, discussed in the secret bosses of my previous video, though he was killed by Zubagier when both his cubs were still young. Now, the youngest, this Mad Tiger, would enjoy spending his time down a well as a place to practice roars, though this would eventually lead to a man one day hearing said roars and climbing down to investigate, finding the tiger wounded, weak, and deep in meditation. This particular man was in search of a bodhisattva, hoping to cure his son after the Samadhi wind had brought sickness on his family, killing his wife and bringing his boy to the brink of death. He'd already spent all his silver on fruitless remedies, and this was a last-ditch effort to save his son. Hearing this, the Mad Tiger, who was far less famous than his brother, the Tiger Vanguard, decided to steal his brother's success stories, passing the Tiger Vanguard statue off as himself, and claiming that he could cure the boy. The man was skeptical, but asking around, it seemed that others thought he was talking about the Tiger Vanguard, and so confirmed that all the stories were true. So, lowering his son into the well, the boy was made to sip from a magical gourd, one that we ourselves can obtain after this fight. The gourd immediately improved the boy's health, and actually made the Mad Tiger feel a sense of satisfaction in himself that he was doing something useful. The man and his son would then make frequent return visits for more gourd sips, further improving the boy's health each time. And eventually, he made such a recovery that he began venturing out into the village and making friends. During this time, the Mad Tiger explained to the father that the wind had harmed the boy's very essence, and only with the flesh of the living could the tiger return to full power, control the wind, and heal the boy completely. The boy then took to calling the tiger Tiger God, and now would frequently recount his experiences from the village with the tiger. So, the man, the father, seeing his son grow stronger by the day, began to reluctantly realize just what it was he needed to do to return his boy to full strength. So, with a heavy heart, he one by one began to lead villagers into the well, sacrificing them to the Mad Tiger for the sake of his own boy. Finally, the tiger gave the gourd up to the boy and his father, telling the boy that he needed to keep drinking. Though, not long after doing this, the visits stopped completely, prompting the Mad Tiger to investigate outside of the well in the village to find out why. The scene that he discovered was all of the villagers dead. It hadn't taken long, you see, for the villagers to eventually realize what was happening, that the man had been routinely sacrificing them for his own son, and thus they had taken their revenge on the boy, killing him on a day that his father had ventured out of the village. But upon the father's return, finding his son dead, he drew his sword and slew the remaining villagers, before setting out and losing himself in the sandstorm, becoming the grief-stricken and clearly insane foe that will then fight on the bridge just beyond Windrest Hamlet.
Where's my son? I can't find him.
Yeah, these lines really hit different when you know the full context.
Is my karma? I shouldn't have. With all my skills, I failed.
What the Mad Tiger found then, among the massacred villagers, was the boy in a coffin and the gourd still around his neck, having been beaten to death with sticks. So, the Mad Tiger took the coffin back to the well with him, vowing one day to stop the wind and the sand. And this is where we come in. By first defeating the father of the boy, Tiger Acolyte, we will obtain the item Old Rattle Drum, a keepsake capable of reawakening the spirit of the boy in specific areas. 3 specific areas in fact, with the first being back in the village behind the Windrest Hamlet Shrine, down into these houses on the left. As we draw near, our vision will begin to blur, and the boy will begin to speak, explaining that in his final moments, the villagers told him what his father had done, as he desperately attempted to deny it. Then, the second location we need to visit is through the doors locked by the keenness of tiger and sternness of stone keys, behind where we fought the Rat Prince duo. Down and into the houses on the right before the bridge, the boy will speak of the man in stone and the yellow-robed squire, both citizens of this land that we can also meet and which the boy knew in his time. The final location is beside Sandgate Village itself, around to the left of the arena where we fight the Earthwolf. This, in fact, is the location of the secret well that Mad Tiger now dwells in, and upon reaching it, the boy's spirit will materialize and beckon us down. So, finally, after many steps, we'll come face to face with the Mad Tiger, who, unlike his brother, is entirely opposed to the Yellow Wind Sage, and if things like this fight had gone differently, could have potentially made for an excellent ally of ours in our fight against him too. Though, to be fair, we can still use him as a spirit for said fight. But given this tiger's hunger for flesh still, our only resolve is to first defeat him. This will earn us a few rewards, the spirit, as I mentioned, as well as the Plaguebane Gourds, one which will halve the amount we heal in exchange for a brief window of additional attack damage. Definitely one of the most obscure Chapter 2 bosses, and one with a tragic, morally tough story underpinning him. After all, if the only way to save your son was to feed a village of strangers to a hungry tiger, then who would you choose to save? Mad Tiger may be an obscure secret, but there's a Chapter 2 boss arguably even more hidden in plain sight. Across the region between the school hideouts and Rockrest Flat Shrines, you'll notice several of these Buddha heads laying about the place. When approached, they allow us to draw their power, harvesting the Buddha eyeball key items as we do so. Now, after defeating the Tiger's Acolyte boss from earlier, continuing along that path will bring us into the arena of the Stone Vanguard, a key and compulsory boss for this chapter, though its true purpose in this arena is to guard an enemy yet greater still. Take note of this pile of rocks in the arena. Yes, it's actually a thing, it's a being, which, when interacted with, will read, "Bound by 6 seals, eternally confined. In yellow earth, the evil's fate entwined." This clue tells us that in order to free this boss, we'll need the keys for 6 seals. The keys being those same Buddha eyes that I mentioned. So the first is just back down the hill from the school hideout shrine, here, with 2 more directly up the hill above the Man in Stone's ravine location, both on and around these bits of scaffolding, just here. 4 is instead up left of the school hideout shrine, and then left again in front of this Buddha shrine area. The 5th is further above this, near where we fight the Mother of Stones, around the corner on an outcrop of cliff, whilst the final one is nearer to the Rockrest Flat Shrine, to the left and just outside the arena that we'll want to return to after securing all 6. Replacing them all within this pile of stones will finally awaken the Shigandang, a Stone Guai king, and originally a simple rock, who, through the energy of the sun and moon, eventually developed sentience, fashioning itself into a mountain deity. Sometime after this thing developed sentience, several Buddha heads would also emerge from the ground, and you'll notice that these have a striking resemblance to Bodhisattva Lingzhi, and since he is the ultimate authority of these lands, I think it's safe to assume that they were put here by his own doing. The heads then proceeded to scream at any passing living creature, and would even swallow whole those that got too close. Perhaps an attempt by Lingzhi to maintain a natural order in these lands, but determining the heads to be strange and dangerous, this particular Stone Guai took it upon themselves to eliminate the Buddha heads, crushing them with its might. Though in doing this, the Guai merely found it had absorbed the heads, which now regrew from its own body, changing the Guai completely, turning it, I think, into a vessel or a mount for Bodhisattva Lingzhi himself. Now, ever hungry for more, the Stone Guai sought out the remaining heads, crushing them, absorbing their power, and growing in size as it did so. But as it absorbed these heads, the Stone Guai found the nourishment of the sun and moon, which had given it life in the first place, was no longer enough. And instead, just as the Buddha heads had been doing before now, it began to feed on the local living creatures, and with its newfound size and strength, there were none who could dare challenge it. That is, until this guy came along. Whilst the Yellow Wind Sage will eventually become a tyrant that we have to defeat as well, we already know from the Kingdom of Sahali secret area set in the past that the Sage wasn't always this way. Originally, he was the savior of these lands, and just as he saved those poor people from the giant Fuban beetle, which was also using the power of a Buddha head, when he encountered the Shigandang, he once again fought to liberate the people threatened by it. And having already encountered a practically identical power to this before, he did successfully defeat this creature, as well as the remaining Buddha heads that powered it. Then he gouged out the eyeballs and scattered them about the valley to seal this monster away. Thus, he earned the respect of those in the Yellow Wind Ridge and was proclaimed their new king. I'll do a deeper lore video soon on the Yellow Wind Sage and his transformation from hero to villain, so make sure to subscribe for that. But as for the Shigandang, it did, I think, effectively become a vessel for Bodhisattva Lingzhi to enact his will in the Yellow Wind Ridge, a creature that, in attempting to be a hero in its own world, ultimately just became a puppet for a higher being. On to Chapter 3 now, and here's one that's all too easy to breeze past. Down in the Valley of Ecstasy area, later into the chapter, midway through the region before coming to the temple, is the Towers of Karma Shrine, and heading immediately left of it, you'll come around to a grove of various ginseng plants, which you'll absolutely want to harvest, as one of these is our hidden boss. No ordinary ginsengling in this case, but instead the named old Ginseng Guai. Now, it's said that consuming the ginseng plant could massively increase one's longevity due to its humanoid shape. This resulted in the gathering of this tuber to become a very popular thing among humans, much to the horror of the ginseng roots themselves, who'd tremble in fear as they heard the sound of human footsteps overhead. When the humans departed, only the tiniest of ginseng plants remained, marked for harvesting at a later, more mature date. But in the time between now and then, the scared and revenge-driven plants would overdevelop into a creature unto their own, resulting in the actually fairly common attacks that can happen when harvesting these things. But this Ginseng Guai in particular is different, for several reasons. First of all, it drops the Ginseng Cape, this cool-looking cloak of roots that provides chill resistance and is great for this chapter, and gives a max stamina boost after using the gourd. Don't miss also the Jade Essence drink here, which recovers not only health but mana too. There's also the Ginseng Seed for growing this stuff back in the Painted Realm, the Ginseng Guai's Spirit attack, which summons 2 smaller variants, and of course a further bit of lore expansion. Well, kind of. Though I do love how this one literally says at the end, just take the story as a fun anecdote. I think that sentence alone highlights how sometimes these journal entries aren't point-for-point gospel lore, but can sometimes be used to convey more of an idea through an anecdote. In this case, it's a story told by a pharmacist from the city whose cousins were ginseng gatherers up in the mountains. Their consumption of ginseng ensured that they lived longer lives, yet the pharmacist rejects their way of life all the same, claiming that though their lives may be longer, their food is bland and their existence lonelier, implying he values a greater quality of life over quantity. It also recounts how the family, despite having little, would always make every effort to put up an old, disheveled man who'd frequently visit their home, gifting him lavish meals and fine wine. The cousin would initially, for years, see the man as a freeloading drunk, until the day that his great-grandmother was dying of typhoid fever. Upon hearing of this, the man was summoned back to the home and speed grew them some millennium ginseng, the good stuff direct from the ground, blending it into a soup and using it to revive and rescue the grandmother. I guess the idea is that the old man was a Ginseng Guai in disguise, and the family helped him out all these years despite their lack of wealth, knowing that he'd have their backs should anything bad happen. I think overall this story explores the comparison between a long, quiet and frugal life or a shorter and more eventful one, perhaps concluding in a blaze of glory. But overall, as the journal states, this one is more a commentary on the meaning behind these plant-based guais than a concrete lore to go off. This next character of Chapter 3 is comprised of several steps, beginning with a first encounter way back at the north shore of the Bitter Lake after departing off the back of Turtle General. Taking an immediate left along the shoreline past where we'll encounter Qianlong is a new gourd, but before it, a man under assault from a Pramana bats. Dispatch them and speak to the man who claimed to be a treasure hunter. Exhausting his dialogue will also then provide us a clue of the treasure that he seeks.
Green without, round and sweet, red within, a summer treat. Where can I find something like that in this frozen land?
Odd description for a treasure at this stage, but with hindsight, that's actually pretty clear. The next place you'll find this guy then is again just before the towers of Karma Shrine from the last chapter, heading back along the path behind. This time, he'll complain about the cold and beg for a fire, which we can of course conjure using our Ring of Fire spell, changeable at the nearby shrine. Grateful for our rescue, the hunter will now reveal he is on a quest for watermelons. Obviously, green without, red within, sweet, etc. Only these watermelons can apparently also grant prolonged life with a single bite, having been planted by Maitreya, that Buddha kid that we meet several times in this chapter. Though there is a deeper meaning still behind these watermelons. You see, in the original Journey to the West, the other members of Sun Wukong's company, including Tan Sengzang and Zhu Bajie, are tricked and imprisoned by Yellowbrow, the big bad Buddha wannabe guy of this region. Sun Wukong then arrives to help with a lot of reinforcements, but they're all captured inside Yellowbrow's sack. So, rather than using brute force, Sun Wukong then resolves to guile and trickery, transforming himself into a watermelon, a fruit which Yellowbrow then unsuspectingly eats, literally allowing Sun Wukong to sow utter chaos in the man's stomach, forcing him into surrendering back to Maitreya. Back to this game though, and the hunter will imply that the melons are hidden under a cliff. Now you'll want to return to the Forest of Felicity Shrine, heading right past the Fox Spirits and down towards this stream. Follow it along and it'll drop down to the secret melon field where, surprise surprise,
It's a trap!
the treasure hunter, it turns out, is kind of our enemy. A boss named the Green-Capped Martialist, armed with a chakram that he will routinely use in the fight to roll at us. In fact, for this whole interim of the fight, it felt a lot like I was trying to jump through a moving Doctor Strange portal, so that's pretty cool. I mean, at least it was, until winning the fight, where the Green-Capped Martialist literally does turn the chakram into a Doctor Strange portal and flee through it.
Foolhardy, nothing more. I've done as our brother asked. Till we meet again!
Yeah, we don't actually meet this one again, I don't think, so maybe that's a clue that we'll get a sequel. Anyway, the brother that the Green-Capped Martialist speaks of in this bit is actually Erlang Shen, and he's not the only disciple or brother that Erlang has sent to intercept us. There is in fact one in each chapter: the white-clad noble, yellow-robed squire, this guy, the Venom Daoist, and finally the Pale Axe Stalwart. But after defeating the Green-Capped Martialist, this field without any melons will turn, at least for the cutscene, into a genuine melon field, where we once again meet Maitreya, who, after a brief mention of Sun Wukong's use of this fruit in the past, will further hint towards the location of Erlang himself, asking if we've paid him a visit at the Great Pagoda. Though, since his hiding spot is only accessible after completing the main game once, then pressing to continue, that's gonna have to wait. As will I, with explaining all of that wider main lore, because it spans well beyond this boss. Indeed, our reward for defeating the Green-Capped Martialist is the spell to end all spells. Spellbinder literally disables the use of any further spells in a fight, instead enhancing our martial arts skills. It makes the game feel more like a bare-bones Souls-like using this, and honestly, I think it's great for helping you hone the fundamentals of the game's combat. Perfect dodge timing becomes a lot more necessary without the use of Cloud Step or Immobilize, for instance. You might love the spells, and you might barely use this one, but I definitely make sure not to miss this boss's hidden quest all the same. Though, as I said, the green-capped Martialist isn't the only brother of Erlang Shen we can meet and fight in the game. And in Chapter 4, tucked away behind the pool of shattered Jade Shrine in the upper region of the Webbed Hollow, basically taking the route on screen, dropping down right from the upper hollow, and then eventually through a tunnel of clawed cocoons, past a meditation point, before finally coming to a boss named Odd Cocoon, which, when hit, will also mention having been sent here by his brother, Erlang Shen, over 100 years ago, to again intercept the Destined One on their journey. And in initially coming to this land, the Venom Daoist met the 100-eyed Daoist Master, the main boss of this chapter. And despite waiting 100 years, the Venom Daoist explains in the journal that the Master taught him no skills, claiming that the Venom Daoist is too skilled already. Though, when further pressed, after 100 years bear in mind, the Master finally offers a unique method of practice, a trial, if you will, to become something more. And so, the Venom Daoist was led into the Webbed Hollow, where he was wrapped into a cocoon to transform into a specialized 8-legged insect Guai. And when we break him out, it turns out he was expecting us.
You're here, at last, the Destined One. By my brother's words, I will first test your worth.
Again, another trial left by Erlang Shen for the Destined One. And throughout this fight, we can remove, I think, 4 of the Daoist's newfound arms, prompting him to flee through a less flashy portal this time for round 2, once he reaches his full mastery. And unlike the green-capped Martialist, there is actually a round 2 this time. A while later, into Chapter 4, after we escape the Spider's Lair and reach the Temple of Yellow Flowers, towards the end of the region, basically from the Court of Illumination Shrine, but rather than heading right towards the final boss, heading back on yourself and up this mountain pass, which will eventually drop us down into a large cavern. Here we'll come face to face with the Venom Daoist once again, who claimed he only endured his days in that cocoon sack in order to have the power to test us, and is now mad that we sliced 4 of his arms off, attacking us once again. But once removing the final 2 additional arms, the Venom Daoist comes to a realization about the so-called ascension via the use of cocoon sacks.
I see now. There's never ascension from those sacks. Worthless limbs be gone! That old Daoist fooled me. My challenge was a delusion. Forget it! Face me in a fair fight. You shall learn to best that corruption.
Indeed, this isn't the first time that the 100-eyed Daoist has tricked his disciples into believing spider sacks hold the way to ascension, and we'll come back to other examples of the Daoist Master's misdeeds shortly. As for the Venom Daoist though, he finally realizes that all those extra limbs were nothing but a hindrance, and truly he was at his full power with just his original legs. In fact, if we look at the entry for the puppet spider, Lesser Guai, as well, we can see that it too has those limbs also bound and out the way, possibly lending further credence to this idea. But with his true power restored, the Venom Daoist is ready to challenge us one final time, and having emerged victorious from that fight, this brother of Erlang Shen will directly point us to the secret region of this chapter, once again set in the past on Purple Cloud Mountain. But before we head there, if you haven't already, there's one more very missable boss just back up the hill here, in the area to the right of us on the way down as opposed to the left. Here, there'll be several snake-headed mushrooms to harvest, one of which proves to actually be a Fungiwoman, an enemy with a boss health bar, who's annoyingly proficient in healing up throughout the fight, and utilizes a variety of different spin attacks. Be prepared for a surprisingly more challenging fight than you might expect in that regard. Finally defeating her though, for the monkey head fungus seed to grow this stuff back in the Painted Realm, a knot of voidness for max upgrading spirits, and the Fungiwoman spirit herself, which does this cool floaty spore attack that, just like her, can heal us too. Then also, off to the side of this area is the Sunset of the Nine Skies drink, capable of recovering not only health but also our ki, which is the stuff we charge up to allow for both the use of spirit attacks and vessel powers, these two down here, enabling often more than just 1 or 2 of these attacks attacks during a fight. As to who or what exactly the Fungiwoman was, well, sadly, she's one of the few bosses to actually feature no specific journal entry on her lore specifically. The closest we have is the Lesser Jiao Guai entry on fungalings in general, which again tells more of an anecdote of how a girl and her widowed mother would work tirelessly in her village just to survive, and the girl, having no time for real friendships, would share all of her thoughts with a mushroom growing in the corner of their rotten abode. When the mother one day fell ill, the two were forced to sell their house, which garnered the interest of a nearby neighbor. But being stingy, this neighbor tried to ward off the other buyers in order to lower the price of the house, creating much stress and upset for the girl, who would often cry in the presence of her mushroom friends. Following this, the mushrooms grew vastly in number, overwhelming the house of her neighbor, and notably there was one particular giant mushroom growing on the main beam. When the removal of this was attempted, it leapt into the air and landed on the neighbor, crushing him to death and releasing spores which knocked out everybody else. The many mushrooms then transformed into guais and helped the widow and her daughter to flee into the mountains. Now, again, it's possibly just a fun anecdote to contextualize the general idea and temperament behind this type of guai, but who knows? Perhaps this Fungiwoman, who is to be fair hiding up in the mountains now, is the same one who violently assisted that daughter and her widow. And since she heals up by casting spores at others, perhaps she in fact reveled in the excuse to cast this power over their village. Speculation, I know, but you can probably tell by now that if lore on these enemies does exist, then I will stop at nothing until I found and pieced it all together. But with that in mind, do comment below any of your own theories or discoveries on these fungi-based guai. Back down the hill though, and it's time to venture to Chapter 4's secret region of Purple Cloud Mountain, a place containing 3 more bosses, 2 of whom are somewhat linked and we'll cover next, and the other being far easier to accidentally skip. So, just past the Petal Fall Hamlet Shrine, into this village area, speak to the character Daoist Mi, who will tell us of the inside devouring armor worms, and how eating their eggs will grant great power, but also transform you into an insect guai. They're basically a form of pestilence that originate from the Elder Armorworm, a creature taken from Kunlun that contorted into a guai down in this plane, and I cover its lore in my previous hidden boss video. But long story short, the Armorworm's influence spread across this whole region, with its eggs either breeding insect guais, or those that weren't consumed hatching into yet more armorworms. Now, some of these worms have a particular history with the Sword Daoists, the elite warriors of the Temple of Yellow Flowers, who in previous days were sent to Purple Cloud Mountain by the 100-eyed Daoist Master, under the instruction that in order to ascend to true Daohood, they must seek out the strands of celestial silk trailing into the sky, and below them consume purple egg pills, transforming them into their ascended vessels. A similar ruse as the one he played with the Venom Daoist. Though, upon ingesting the pills, the swordmen were of course immediately transformed into worm practitioner guais. These things, with the remaining Daoists that hesitated initially in taking the pills, now being labelled unfit to ascend, and struck down by the newfound worm guais. Why is all this relevant to the Daoist Mi though? Well, according to him, those Daoists were his fellow disciples, and now he hopes that we can do the task he cannot, in ending their suffering once and for all, merely asking that if we do, and we find any unhatched remaining eggs, to bring them to him, so that he may try and find a cure. What you'll want to look for now is an item called the Violet Hail, which is dropped randomly by another of the Daoists further into this village. Return it to the Daoist Mi, and he'll thank us, before kindly requesting that we also leave our head, as that too would please his master, springing into attack mode. Be aware, this is a 2-stage fight, and after defeating him the first time, Daoist Mi will do exactly the same as the Daoist swordmasters of old, by consuming this thing and transforming into a worm guai. Defeat him again, and this same transformation will become ours to use for the rest of the game. We'll also receive an extra visit from Hong Yi, who's part of the Duskveil questline, which we'll get to next, but here, she specifically explains that these mortals, in their endless quest for power, only wind up destroying themselves. But the big question around this boss remains: who was this mysterious figure wearing a stone mask? And well, in the game's journal entries alone, the answer is actually way more detailed than you might expect, as the journals tell the story of a boy across the span of many seemingly unconnected entries, starting with that of the Wasp Guai, which explains how years ago a boy lived happily with his father and mother, until one day the father was seduced by the spiders of the zoo estate and entranced into the webbed hollow, a bit like Zubagier was, which of course left the boy and his mother heartbroken. So, seeing their anguish wrought on his mother, the boy vowed to one day take revenge on those spiders. Years later, when a little older, he travelled to the Hollow to do just this, where he was captured of course by Guais, but kept safe by the 6th spider sister, who'd taken a liking to him and kept him around as a friend, possibly prospective future lover. Now, this created a conflict within the boy, who, in his own privacy, vocally wrestled between the notions of having his revenge and, well, getting it on with a girl who was actually a spider. The thing is, this whole thing was overheard by a Wasp Guai, who immediately grassed him up to the sisters and landed him in big trouble, though one of the elder sisters, kind of understanding the boy's drive for revenge, decided not to outright kill him, but instead just probably kill him by casting him into the depths below, where the boy encountered a centipede Guai, the entry where this story picks up. His leg broken and his flesh then torn by this new insect, the boy did manage to kill it, discovering, interestingly, that its venom had healing properties. Then, many more centipede Guais emerged, and the boy did eventually manage to escape by pretending to be a centipede himself for the next 10 days. After his eventual escape, he made it back to his village, where he decided revenge wasn't really the way to go for living a long, good, and prosperous life. Though, at this point, the weavers of the village, who'd long coveted the silk of the webbed hollow and the zoo estate, now demanded answers as to how the boy made it there and back again, demanding that he return to obtain the treasures that they'd long been after. And this brings us on to the Daoist Mi's actual entry, where finally, through the encouragement of his mother, he did lead a group of weavers back to the hollow, to apparently rescue his father, possibly as much as anything. Though, because the weavers couldn't work as a team, at all, the heist was unsuccessful. By the end, only the boy once again remained alive. At this point, tired of all of this, and just begging the sisters to let him stay in the hollow for good. I think he just wanted a place to belong by this point. Though, and I think he's kind of lucky that he wasn't straight up killed, he was expelled once again from the estate, leading him instead to a village of insect Guais, where he was introduced to the 100-eyed Daoist master, the main boss of this chapter. Again, tired of all this back and forth and longing just for a place in the world, the boy now wholeheartedly embraced the teachings of this new master, donning a stone mask and beginning his training. Though not too far into this, he was surprised to see the spider sisters and their mother visiting his new home, where, being spiders and Guais and all, they dined on a banquet of varying human meats, explaining that to them, human lives are so fleeting that to kill and eat them merely shortens their longevity by what the Guais see as a blink of an eye. Though this sparked a lot of moral conundrums for the boy, of course. If he didn't become a Guai himself, he risked being eaten, but if he did, he too would become a monster. But finally, after a night of contemplation and lots of tears apparently, he decided that he would become a disciple Guai, straight up asking the 100-eyed Daoist master about the quickest path to Guaihood. He was then directed to Purple Cloud Mountain, just like all the other swordman Daoists of before, to seek out the armor worm eggs and consume them. And the most alarming thing, after reading this whole story, is that we know that Daoist Mi, from his dialogue, is clearly aware of what the results of ingesting these eggs will be. But I guess it's clear that after the life he'd led and the shit he'd seen, he actually favored being internally devoured for the sense of belonging he hoped it would bring with it, over simply walking away and finding a less disturbing cult to be a part of. But in the end, after defeating this unfortunate and disturbed boy, it turns out the only one capable of wielding this item without being destroyed by it is us. Why is that? Well, I guess it's down to our ability to transform already, our mastery over our own matter, as it were. Anyway, interesting boss with a surprisingly rich and detailed story behind him. But Purple Cloud Mountain also tells the tale of two more creatures, and it's easy to miss this particular plot detail depending on what order you fight these two bosses, but the Scorpionlord and the Duskveil actually have some major beef with one another, so much so that if you don't fight the Scorpionlord before the Duskveil, he'll erupt from the ground during the Duskveil fight, demanding vengeance for his wife.
Today, I'll bring justice for my wife!
joining you in the fight and practically trivializing stage 1 of this battle. Though cool as this whole thing looks, you probably do want to fight the Scorpionlord by himself before this fight if you want to obtain all of his loot. He's otherwise found just up from the Bounds of Deity's Abode Shrine. But let's take a step back for a second and look at who the Scorpionlord really is. See, in the mountain on which he was born, female supremacy was the societal norm. They were ruled by a queen whose skills mostly lay in matters of bedrooms and pleasure, and she had many partners, amongst whom was this Scorpionlord, with whom she produced 4 offspring. But since they were all Scorpion princes, the queen felt she had little to teach any of them, and moved on from this lord and their children. Eventually, the lord and his sons would move on too, heading to the Webbed Hollow, and in fact for a long time, the 4 Scorpion princes, whom we can encounter about this place, have been desperately and vainly attempting to pull the 4 eldest spider sisters. A lot of insect romance in this story. But back in the original Journey to the West, the Scorpion Queen would encounter Tang Sanzang on his journey, wherein she kidnapped and attempted to seduce him in order to obtain his power, to which this bro managed to resist all of her feminine, female Scorpion wilds. Then, as is usually the case in the story, soon Wukong came to the rescue. Only this time, the Queen's poisonous sting proved to be something of a challenge for the monkey, leading him, on this occasion, to enlist the help of Maori Xingguan. I think that's how you pronounce that. The son of a bodhisattva named Pilampo, who was promoted by the Celestial Court to become one of the 28 constellations in the sky. For this battle, Xingguan transformed into a giant rooster, defeating and killing the Scorpion Queen with ease. Sun Wukong then burned their cave, and when the Scorpionlord returned to the scene of the fire, he found his former lover stripped, with her tail severed and her body reduced to a pulp. And from that day forth, the Scorpionlord swore vengeance for his wife against this rooster god, who in this game is referred to as the Dawn Star. Not that small shipping town from Skyrim, but more, I guess, a literal Star of Dawn. Though, over time, the vessel of the Dawn Star would become corrupted into what's now known as the Duskveil. Get it? Dawn Star, Duskveil? I think there's some sort of mirroring there. So that explains the beef between these two creatures, but let's track back a bit now to the life of Maori Xingguan. Growing up on Purple Cloud Mountain, the Dawn Star, as we'll now call him because it's just easier to pronounce, in his youth was a friend of Hong Yi, the snake lady we meet at the start of this region, who'd always apparently viewed him as a younger brother. Now, before his promotion to Constellation Officer, the Dawn Star served in the Hall of Incense, until given his far greater responsibilities. There's an entry for Hong Yi in the character part of the journal, where she recounts how at his promotion ceremony, Dawn Star spoke to all manner of guests, though no longer noticed her. Yet, when we do meet her in the snake form at the start of Purple Cloud Mountain, she claims to be there to retrieve the belongings of her late husband. So whether she actually did marry the Dawn Star later on is a possibility to speculate on. Of course, as we established, the guy became a rooster god and helped Sun Wukong defeat the Scorpion Queen. He also, around this time, extracted the essence of his own eyes as a gift for his mother, transforming it into the Weaver's Needle item that we get at the end of this tale, and which helps against the 100-eyed Daoist Master. But before all of that was his downfall, which came when Purple Cloud Mountain was assaulted by insect Guais, and the Dawn Star was tricked into defeat by a Guai he'd passed off as insignificant. A Guai who'd managed to come into possession of the Weaver's Needle, slitting the Dawn Star's throat and beginning an evil ritual. This assault was the first of 2 attempts, in fact, made by the 100-eyed Daoist Master to use the eggs of armor worms against the celestial beings. So, subdued, the Dawn Star's slit throat was first healed by a decoction to keep him alive, but then the followers produced 2 golden armor worm cocoons. The first was accidentally hatched as the Dawn Star coughed blood onto it, the worm slithering away, whilst the second was poured down the Dawn Star's throat, sending his mind into a haze and transforming him from Dawn Star into Duskveil. His last hope, his last thought before his mind was overpowered, went towards his mother, Bodhisattva Pilampo, hoping that she would be spared from the designs of this evil Daoist master. However, bearing in mind that this chapter is set long in the past and looking at the creatures around the webbed hollow, I'm willing to bet that Bodhisattva Pilampo eventually also fell victim to the 100-eyed Daoist master. After all, there is a creature which we fight down this thin crevice called the right hand of the Buddha, which would imply it to be just that, with a journal entry containing a word from the Daoist master explaining how he implanted the 2 arms of the Buddha with armor worm eggs as well, it being his second, more successful attempt at corrupting the flesh of the Celestials. But back to Purple Cloud Mountain, and another piece of evidence that the Duskveil was the Dawnstar is how Hong Yi says this after we defeat the Daoist Mi.
Go, release him. Being trapped there is a torment worse than death. I've watched him grow up. I cannot bring myself to do it.
So, thanks to her sentimentality both towards the Dawnstar and his Bodhisattva mother, it falls to us to defeat this corrupted celestial entity in a fairly tough 2-stage fight, though one that I was able to complete without needing too many tries at level 73. After this, we will recover the Weaver's Needle that was used to defeat him initially, and Hong Yi, grateful for our help in this, will restore it to full power once again. And just like most of the secret areas, this final reward will make fighting the 100-eyed Daoist Guai at the end of the chapter a hell of a lot easier. Overall, there's definitely a little bit more lore that we can cover on both the Scorpionlord and the Duskveil, but I'll be exploring that in another video on the main bosses of each chapter, so stay tuned for that coming soon. This next one is hidden in Chapter 5, and can be found right near to the Ashen Pass 3 shrine, just before the whole rolling ball challenge thing. Simply start harvesting these Lingzhi mushrooms, and one will reveal itself to be yet another disguised Guai, the 9-capped Lingzhi. A very similar deal to the Fungiling and Ginseng Guais from earlier, dropping a seed, a spirit, and in this case also an interesting piece of headgear. The Earth Spirit Cap will slowly drain our health, so probably isn't the best thing to passively equip, but to make up for this, when using the gourd, we will recover significantly more health, so possibly worth using in boss fights where we'll be healing a lot anyway. As to the lore of this thing, once again, there's no specific journal entry for the boss, but there is one from Chapter 3 for Lingzhi as a species, recalling a tale of how the sons of a wealthy brewing estate, obsessed with heroism and garnering renown, killed one of these Guais, only to discover that they had in fact killed the secret brewer of the estate finest beverage. The sons had, in an attempt to garner renown for themselves, accidentally spiraled their family business into ruin. I guess there's a lesson to be had there in destroying yourself with your own hubris, and in fact, this story ends with the brothers actually departing to find a new life, being sent off to a grand feast. Though after their departure, interestingly, the business recovered, and once again, though secretly, 2 new beings would come now at night and toil away to craft the finest brews. Though, these 2 Lingzhi are described to have an uncanny resemblance to the Master's sons, perhaps implying that they met not so nice an end after all. Again, I think especially with these entries on the various fungus Guais, the journal is more about the message than fixed lore. Still, it's interesting to note when fighting these ones that they are actually secret master brewers. The final hidden boss for today can't be found until Chapter 6. You know, that hugely open area around Mount Huego that we get to fly around on a cloud. In fact, there's a lot of hidden bosses around this place, but the one I want to draw your attention to for this video is arguably the toughest to find. So, at the top of the cliff, where we first unlock the ability to use the cloud, you'll have the gold armored rhino to your right, and the main swamp area below to your left. However, more directly below, keep an eye out for this pool of water hugging the cliff. It looks totally empty from above, but when you actually land in it, you'll be attacked by a unique Yaoguai chief known as Jiao-Loong of Waves. And to some, he's going to be a more elusive Long than even the 4 Long brothers, for whom there's a hidden questline. I covered them in my last video. But this Long is an entity unto himself, which translates roughly to Flood Dragon, a divine creature of the waters and only of the waters. It literally loses its divine powers when out of the water, water, which is why, for this fight, it'll routinely dive down and transform into a writhing mass of tentacles before emerging once again as an actually defeatable Long. And fittingly, upon its defeat, it'll drop the Waterward Orb, a curio capable of massively increasing our defense stats, but only when in water. Though, to be fair, there's at least one very prominent boss fight coming up where this could be very useful. More of them if you're doing New Game Plus. In the journal for this one, we can learn how a fisherman heard of the Jiao-Loong's power over water and fish and desired that power for himself, for nothing more than the trivial ease of having fish jump out onto his boat and make his job a whole lot easier. And as luck would have it, one day he did actually get washed out to sea in a storm, bringing him face to face with the Jiao-Loong of Waves. And when the fisherman asked, the dragon actually agreed to teach him what he wanted to learn. Though there was a catch, for once the fisherman had learned the ways of the water beings, he found that his spirit would grow weary when returning to the land. And a few days after having returned home, he once again leapt into the waves and was never seen again, possibly even becoming another Jiao-Loong of Waves. Maybe even the one we fight here, though quite how or why any water-based Long would decide to come and live in this little body of water is a question for you guys to discuss down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, whether for the secrets, lore, or both. Likes are always greatly appreciated if so. Subscribe for more Wukong content, and as always, a massive thank you to my patrons for helping to keep the channel alive. I'm Sam Bram, and have a great day.